Interesting comments here.
I'm sure we will.
And we are live. Everyone, how is everyone doing? Nick Filato, joined by Rivka Board after the debacle that we just witnessed with the 2023 New York Giants kicking off their season. Week one, unfortunately, a loss, 40-0. A 40 burger was dropped on the New York Giants at home to the point where the Dallas Cowboys were laughing on the sidelines. Like, this has to burn in the souls and just burn a fire through the New York Giants right now, how devastating of a game that was. Rivka, what are your initial thoughts on this?
So I think, the way it's best summed up is something that I learned in high school. When I was in high school, a teacher of mine read us a book that was called Everything That You Need to Know You Learn in Kindergarten. And I don't even remember what the context was, or I do a little bit. I don't remember the exact phrase, but one of the phrases that stuck with me was the word flush. The point was that when something bad happens or whatever, you just flush it out of your memory. And that's one of the most important skills that any football player can have from play to play, but also from week to week. So as much as we can have all these reactions, and I'm sure you'll go over the film, I'll go over the numbers, and we'll, ad nauseum, we'll go over how could this have gone so wrong. Ultimately, it's just one of those games that I think the Giants have to just put out of their memories and say, you know what, on to Arizona, kind of like what Belichick said about Cincinnati, like just we're on to the next week.
There's another thing that is flushed typically by every human being, and that's also synonymous with what we just saw on the television. I'm sure people can put it together as we have people coming into the live stream at the moment. Again, New York Giants lost this game 40-0 against the Dallas Cowboys, and it did seem like, and I know it was an 11 play, like 45-yard drive or something, where the Giants actually had a little bit of life, where there was some play calling that was working. Daniel Jones wasn't getting absolutely annihilated in the backfield, but there was a cascading effect that seemed to plague the New York Giants and persist throughout the game when Andrew Thomas went offsides. And at that one moment, and I'm not sitting here trashing Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas is one of the only great things the New York Giants had on offense, and he didn't have a great game. I think he's dealing with an injury. At least it appeared that way. I don't have any inside information, obviously. But he has that false start, and then you get that bad snap from JMS, which sets up the field goal block. Go figure, Rivka. Special teams just absolutely screwing up. It's something that's also been way too common in recent New York Giants history. But do you think that had some sort of cascading effect, and then it just kept piling on top of the Giants to the point where they just suffocated under mediocrity?
I mean, look, it's very hard to say in a 40-0 game that any one moment, turned the game. But at the same time, if the Giants just even get that field goal and it's 3-0 and they kick off, I don't know, early in the game, yeah, their defense was struggling, but they had their moments where they held Dallas to field goals and, Dallas didn't score on every single drive. The whole tenor of the game could have been different. And I'm not saying the Giants would have won this game, but would they have not been embarrassed? It's possible. Like, I'm not one of those people who believes, you can go back to any one moment and say, oh, if that hadn't happened, everything else would have happened the same or different. But it did seem like, again, they got off to a nice start momentum wise. They have 3rd and 2. It's in, at the Dallas 8. And, you have the chance, like, 3rd and 2, you have a lot of options. And then all of a sudden he goes, he jumps off, and even 3rd and 7, like, you have a chance at least to get, a pretty chip shot field goal. And then it's actually ironic because when I went on my live stream with Ed before the Giants-Jets preseason game, he asked me how Joe Tippmann is doing with the Jets because Joe Tippmann was his favorite center. And I told him Joe Tippmann's not starting because he can't snap the ball and in shotgun, which he can't. And it's very interesting because you see in the first game, and JMS had not had those issues. And, again, you can chalk it up to just slippery turf, or it's one of the, slippery ball, one of the things that happens. But ultimately, bad snap, aborted play, and still 45-yard field goal. You think, okay, Graham Gano, Mr. Automatic. And then it's just like, oh, my gosh, like what on earth just happened?
It's exactly what it was. It was what on earth just happened. And when the Giants got the ball back, it was just a 3-and-out. I think that was when Daniel Jones was first sacked. It was like a 10-yard loss where Micah Parsons just broke through. And I mean, if we want to highlight one area of the Giants that I'm mostly concerned about, it's the area of the Giants that I've been mostly concerned about over the last decade, and that's their offensive line. The offensive line couldn't block at all for Daniel Jones. And look, the offensive line was horrendous. Daniel Jones also didn't look great, but the kid was running for his life the entire game. And I have some serious issues with what we saw on the right side. Mark Lewinsky and Evan Neal, they couldn't pick up twists. couldn't pick up stunts. Evan Neal was getting beat, not just by Micah Parsons. Like, if you're getting beat by 11, it's understandable to a certain degree. You're a professional athlete as well, and you were also a top 10 pick in last year's draft. We expect a little bit more from you at this point, but he's getting beat by like Dorrance Armstrong. He's getting beat by like Dante Fowler. Like, that is not good, Rivka Board. Like, if Evan Neal is the Evan Neal from last year, we're going into next offseason saying we need to do something about our right tackle situation if he stays healthy.
Forget about next year. If they go in, if they have any shot this year and he keeps playing like this, which I can't imagine that they can have a shot with this schedule, with the way he's been playing. I mean, you look at the pass rushers that the Giants are facing, and you can bet every one of them will be lined up on Evan Neal. And you just look at everything. If they have any shot in the NFC, they're going to have to be thinking about what can we do at the deadline, even just to get someone who can at least, hold up for 2 seconds. Like, we're not talking about how Jones was taking forever in the pocket, although it could be that there were some plays, we have to see the film to see what was going on downfield. But for the most part, he's getting hit. He hits his back foot, hits the, after he hits the ground, and he has guys in his face. I mean, that's not tenable for anyone. I had an article post today about how, Jones has receivers now, so maybe he can mitigate the effect of his offensive line. I'm sorry, Tom Brady couldn't mitigate the effect of that offensive line.
No, he couldn't. It was rough. It was rough all around. Like, it was Murphy's Law. This entire game was Murphy's Law to a T. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And it just seemed that way. Even in the second half, when the Giants were hitting big plays, like the pass to Isaiah Hodgins and then one to Paris Campbell, they end up or I think it was Matt Breida, they ended up fumbling the football. And it's just like, dude, even on these plays, everything went wrong for the New York Giants. And we're entering this season with high expectations. A lot of us believe the Giants are talented enough with all the upgrades that Joe Shane added, talented enough to make the playoffs. With this schedule, with what we just saw, there's a long season ahead of us. I get it. But holy crap, 40-0 against your arch rival. I've talked about it a lot, Rivka. The Giants need to win divisional games. You need to. You just had a home one. You didn't just lose. You got embarrassed. This might be one of the most embarrassing losses by the New York Giants in the history that I've ever covered the team, just because of the expectations. And we've had embarrassing losses, but those teams sucked. This team, from a talent perspective, they don't suck. From a coaching perspective, we have the coach of the year from last season. They don't suck. But they were absolutely out-dueled, out-coached, out-schemed, out-physicaled, out everything. They just got outed by the Dallas Cowboys.
So just to add a little bit of word of, possible hope, even though it's from a Jets history, in 2010, the Jets they and the Patriots were both 9-2. They come in, they're facing the Patriots. I'm pretty sure it was at home at Giant Stadium, and they got wiped out 45-3. And then in the playoffs, they went into Foxborough and beat the Patriots 28-21, and it wasn't even really that close. So sometimes, what happens in one game, and if we remember the 2 Dallas games from 2007 even, and, we remember some of the other things, what happened in those first 2 games and how bad their defense looked, the only thing you say is, yes, it is one game. As bad as it looked, maybe, you can, again, it sounds like excuse making. But they are playing the Cardinals next week, right? If there's one, get better game, it should be the team that's starting who under center?
Yeah, exactly. Josh Dobbs. I would agree with that. Washington, they narrowly escaped.
They did. And yeah, it's true. And I was surprised by that. I really did think that even Washington would beat them. But again, I said that before this game, but somehow I could say it again. I trust Brian Daboll not to be embarrassed 2 weeks in a row.
I trust that too, but we'll tackle that next week. Right now, we are we just want to vent.
In a tailspin, absolutely.
That's a tailspin. A lot of us went into this game. Like, I picked the New York Giants to win. I thought they added enough. I thought it was going to be more of a slugfest. And then the first sign of adversity, it just led to so much more adversity, and it cascaded down on the New York Giants to the point where we had that last touchdown run, and it was just like, was by Turpin or whatever. It was like, I don't want to say they gave up, because I don't believe they did, but it didn't look like it wasn't a good look for the defense, especially with all of the additions the Giants had added. And you still had Tony Pollard doing relatively well on the ground against the Giants. So just all in all, this is a fiasco. You can name any adjective you want. It was disturbing. It was depressing, really, but it was not great. But Rivka, do you have anything else before we bounce out of here? Because this was just a humbling experience.
So I guess one of the concerns that I have that's not even related to the offensive line with Jones is that they didn't really have much space in the running game either. That was one thing that I really thought they would have a little bit more of. And Dallas is somewhat susceptible to being run on up the middle. So I was hoping that, maybe, and early on it looked like maybe they had some space, but as the game went on, yes, obviously they were down by a lot, but even their next couple of drives, they just couldn't get anything consistent going. So that's one thing that I would have hope that would improve, especially with, to me, JMS, John Michael Schmitz, this is his specialty. Like, this is his area, so I would hope that he would get better in that area as time goes on. I'm still very concerned about the pass blocking, but that's one thing that I would hope I would have a little bit more legitimate hope that it will actually improve.
Yes, hopefully. Sean Carpenter asked, what the heck happened tonight? Sean, we have no idea. We have no answers. It was a terrible output from the New York Giants that we love, and it is something that we're going to try to forget, as Rivka said. But I don't know how well we're going to forget that. This is one that's going to sting for quite a while. I'm sure the Giants are going to be circling Dallas Cowboys, their second matchup against them. But right now, it doesn't even look like they deserve to be on the same football field. And I think the Giants are. Yeah, but on the Saquon Barkley, on that first drive, he was ripping off like 5, 6, 7-yard runs. And I remember Chris Collinsworth was bringing up how the Giants can run the football against Dallas. And they added Mozzie Smith. It seemed like the Giants had a varied offensive approach. They were moving Jones a little bit. Dallas was just so disciplined on the bootleg. The Giants led the league. Daniel Jones led the league in play action. They weren't going to fall for it. They didn't really fall for it in the second matchup on Thanksgiving either last. This time, every time Jones went to go roll out, Marcus Lawrence and Michael Parsons or Lawrence Armstrong was right in his face. And that was a big part, I think, of the Giants' game plan. After that, they couldn't adjust, and they quickly found themselves in a 16-0, 19-0 hole. Next thing you know, it's 40-0. It's exactly what Sean asked. What the heck happened?
I mean, that's the question. And really the bigger question is, like, how can you even adjust to that? They have they're playing the Eagles, they're playing the Jets, they're playing a few other teams they're playing the 49ers, like teams with really good defensive lines, and pass rushes. Like, how are you going to adjust to that? If your answer is play action bootleg and the team knows it's coming, I mean, you need some other answer to that. And, and again, like, I could say that Jones needs to be able to read the field quickly, but you can't read the field in a second and a half usually.
One way to answer it is make that backside defender pay by running the football to the opposite side. So the side where that backside defender typically sits to respect Daniel Jones, make him respect Daniel Jones. And now you have one less defender to worry about. That's how you have to pay it. So you have to run the rock. And I'm not necessarily a run the football type of guy. I want to throw the football. I think it's a better EPA type of move, generally speaking, depending on your quarterback and your situations and the context. But that's one way to get that backside defender to keep biting. If you keep running off the opposite tackle, he's going to try to crash down the line of scrimmage, and now you can open it up, like we saw so many times against the Chicago Bears in Week 4 last year.
So the biggest problem with that is if the opposite tackle is on Evan Neal's side, the guy might get there so quickly that he can crash around, even like across the line, especially if there's someone over there to hold the edge. Yeah, it's just, I mean, because I didn't see it clearly enough. The Giants didn't have that many opportunities to be able to even think about like running the ball like that because they were down so quickly. I mean, also, I think another big change in that game was when Saquon Barkley, I think it's called an interception on Jones's record, but it looked to me like it was a drop that just went right into the defender's hands. That was a big moment because, just getting a touchdown off that, like even if the Giants had to punt, like, a touchdown is just a very, it was another momentum swinging play to me. Like, I don't remember, was that when it was 9-0 at that point? And that made it 16?
Yes, it was 9-0. The Giants defense stiffened up and forced a field goal. And then that interception happened in 3 plays. I think it was like a 3rd and 18 because Daniel Jones got sacked, go figure. And then the Giants came back and gained 3 yards on their ensuing drive and had to punt. The Giants just consistently were punting or turning the football over until they had that 15-play, 57-yard drive where Graham Gano missed the field goal. So it was just, nothing went right for this team from the start to the finish. But Rivka, anything else?
One other thing I noticed, I was concerned about Adoree Jackson in the slot almost as much as I was about the 2 rookies on the outside. I didn't think he looked great there or so comfortable there, even throughout throughout camp and, things. And I understood why they did it, obviously, because they had guys who can play on the outside, and they have a veteran who has more, the ability to be, the versatility. So they moved into the slot. He had trouble on CeeDee Lamb last year, and he had some trouble again today. He got caught up in a pick play. Not to say that wouldn't happen to other defenders, but he just ran right into it. Didn't kind of even have the awareness to get around it. And I'm wondering about what's going to happen with this experiment as the season goes on, and whether they try to, kind of mix and match with that a little bit. Put some of their safeties in the slot, move around some other players, and let Jackson play on the outside. Again, that depends on how the players on the outside are playing and if Jackson is still their best option, but it was something that I noticed.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. And that's the one play that really came out to me was the bunch set. It was an inward breaking. CeeDee Lamb just looped around, just a simple rub play. Dory Jackson got picked off by, I think, like Peyton Hendershot or Jake Ferguson, one of their young tight ends that they have on their team. But very deflating loss, to be honest. But Rivka, anything else before we bounce?
I think we're good or not good, and we'll just go try to sleep this off.
Yeah, we'll attempt to sleep this off and on to Arizona, the great state of Arizona. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to I'm not sure what the show is, like the Chris and Nick show right here. So with Rivka filling in for Chris. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day, and try to forget about this 40-0 loss because it was bad.